Think about one specific day, not a vacation, not a birthday, just a regular Tuesday in July when you were 10 years old. Nothing happened. You rode your bike to nowhere, ate a popsicle that melted faster than you could eat it, got bored, got on board, got bored again. And that one day, with absolutely nothing in it, felt like it lasted a week. Now think about last July, an entire month gone. You probably can't even tell me what happened in it. Here's the part that should bother you. The math is backwards. One single boring day as a kid felt longer than an entire month feels now. A whole year used to feel like a slow, sprawling era. Summer alone felt like its own country with its own laws. Now an entire year slides by like a weekend you slept through. Something happened to time. And it's not what you think. It's not that time sped up. It's that you stopped making any. That sentence is going to make more sense in a minute, but hold on to it, because it's the whole answer hiding in plain sight. Here's the first thing almost nobody tells you. Your brain doesn't actually measure time while it's happening. There's no internal stopwatch ticking away in real time. What you experience as how long something felt is something your brain builds after the fact, by counting how many new memories it laid down during that stretch. Think of your memory like a folder system. A day packed with new experiences, new smells, new faces, new mistakes, new places, gets a thick folder. A day where nothing new happens gets a thin folder, sometimes no folder at all. And here's the trick. When your brain later looks back and asks, how long did that feel? It's not checking a clock. It's checking the thickness of the folder. That's why a 2-week trip to a country you've never been to feels like it lasted a month. But 2 weeks of your normal routine barely register as having happened at all. Same 14 days, wildly different folder thickness. Now go back to being 10. Every single day was a thick folder. You were learning what wasps actually do when provoked. You were discovering that the deep end of the pool feels different at 2 p.m. than at 6 p.m. You were finding out that lying perfectly still in grass for 20 minutes produces a specific kind of boredom that doesn't exist anywhere else in adult life. None of this sounds important, but your brain was filing all of it as new, which means it was filing all of it as long. Childhood wasn't longer, it was just denser. So why does adulthood feel like it's on fast forward? Because somewhere around your early 20s, your brain finished building its model of the world and started running on autopilot. This is the part nobody warns you about. Once your brain has seen enough commutes, enough Mondays, enough grocery store layouts, enough small talk, it stops bothering to record most of it in detail. Why would it? It already knows what a Tuesday looks like. It's seen 4,000 of them. So it compresses the experience, files it under more of the same, and barely tags it at all. This is also, by the way, the exact same mechanism behind why a song you've heard 500 times stops giving you chills, and why the 5th time you watch your favorite movie hits different than the first. Novelty isn't just exciting. It's the raw material time is made of. Remove the novelty and you're not just bored, you're literally manufacturing less time, in the only sense your brain knows how to measure it. Now here's where it gets worse, because there's a modern villain in this story that didn't exist for previous generations. The phone in your pocket. You'd think scrolling for 3 hours would feel like a long time, since you're technically doing something the entire time. But it does the opposite. Scrolling is specifically engineered to feed your brain hundreds of tiny, disconnected fragments. A joke, a stranger's vacation, a recipe, an argument, a dog, none of which lasts long enough or matter enough to get filed as a real memory. Your brain doesn't build a thick folder out of 3 hours of scrolling. It builds almost no folder at all, because nothing in it was distinct enough to keep. That's why you can put your phone down after a long scrolling session and feel like you just lost time, not spent it. It's not a metaphor. You're describing, with total psychological accuracy, what just happened. A chunk of your life that generated no retrievable memory, which means a chunk of your life that as far as your own brain's accounting system is concerned, may as well not have occurred. The most efficient way to skip your own life is to fill it with content that's designed to be forgotten the moment it's seen. Compare that to being 10 years old with a Game Boy that had exactly one game in it, or a backyard with exactly one tree worth climbing. Limited input, but every bit of it got noticed, because there was nothing else competing for your attention. Boredom, it turns out, wasn't the enemy of a long childhood summer. It was the engine of it. Boredom is what pushes a kid to actually look around and notice something. And noticing is the only thing that makes a memory. And a memory is the only thing that makes time feel real. There's a strange psychological effect researchers call the holiday paradox, and it explains the next layer of the contradiction perfectly. While you're on a new, unfamiliar vacation, the days drag. Every hour is unfamiliar. Your brain is working overtime, processing all of it. So time feels slow in the moment. But when you get home and look back at the trip, it suddenly feels like it flew by, because it's compressed into one dense, vivid memory block. Meanwhile, your ordinary life, which felt perfectly normal paced while you were living it, looks back like a flat gray smear with almost nothing in it. That's the trick. Time feels slow when you're inside it and unfamiliar with it. Time feels fast when you look back and it's familiar. Childhood was slow in the moment because everything was unfamiliar. Adulthood is fast in retrospect because almost nothing is. But there's a twist to this that messes with people even more once they notice it. Nostalgia lies about the ratio. When you look back at a childhood summer, your brain doesn't show you the boring parts. And there were a lot of boring parts. It shows you a highlight reel, the one bike crash, the one thunderstorm, the one time you got lost at the fair. Those 3 or 4 sharp memories get stretched in your recollection to represent the entire summer, so the whole thing feels golden and endless in hindsight. Meanwhile, last year doesn't get that treatment yet because it hasn't had time to compress. You're still holding the raw, unedited footage of it, including every annoying Tuesday, which is part of why it feels thinner and faster by comparison. Give it 20 years, and that ordinary year will probably get the same nostalgic edit childhood summers got. Nostalgia isn't memory. It's memory after an editor got to it. There's a darker layer to this too, and it's worth sitting with for a second. Psychologists have a theory called the proportional theory of time. The idea that we don't measure a year against an absolute scale. We measure it against the total amount of life we've already lived. When you were 5, 1 year was 20% of your entire existence. It felt enormous because, relative to everything you'd ever known, it was enormous. At 30, 1 year is a little over 3% of your life. Same 365 days. Completely different weight. This means every year you live, mathematically, the next one will feel shorter than the last. Not because anything is actually accelerating, but because the ruler you're measuring it against keeps growing. It's the cruelest kind of fair. Nothing unfair is happening. And yet, it still feels like you're being robbed. And maybe that's why so many adults chase the same handful of reset experiences. Moving to a new city, starting a new relationship, traveling somewhere they've never been, even just rearranging their furniture. It's not really about the place or the person. It's an attempt to force the brain back into note-taking mode. New environment, new input, thick folder, time stretches back out for a little while. There's one more piece of this that almost nobody talks about, and it has to do with seasons themselves. As a kid, the year wasn't a smooth, featureless line. It was broken into wildly different chapters. Summer didn't look or feel anything like the school year. Christmas didn't feel like Halloween. Each season had its own rituals, its own smells, its own soundtrack, its own rules. That contrast is exactly the kind of novelty your brain loves to file thickly, because each new season was, in a real sense, a new world to learn. Most adult years lose that structure completely. Work doesn't really change in October versus July. The seasons still technically happen, but if your routine doesn't change with them, your brain doesn't register them as different chapters. It registers the whole year as one long, undifferentiated stretch with a few temperature changes. You can live through 4 seasons and only experience one. This is actually the quiet logic behind why so many cultures, long before psychology had a name for any of this, built their lives around rituals and festivals tied to the calendar. Harvests, solstices, religious holidays, birthdays. Those weren't just celebrations, they were time markers. They forced a break in the sameness, on purpose, at a predictable interval, specifically so a year wouldn't blur into a single gray rectangle. A life with rituals in it has built-in chapter breaks. A life without them is one long run-on sentence. So here's the uncomfortable question underneath all of this. If time is really just a record of how much new you let into your life, then most adults aren't actually losing time. They're choosing, day after day, not to make any. Think about how many days last month looked identical to the day before it. Same commute, same scroll, same 3 apps, same dinner, same show. Your brain looked at all of that and quietly decided none of it was worth filing. It wasn't wrong. It just did exactly what you trained it to do. And this is where it stops being a fun fact about psychology and starts being something closer to a warning. Because if your brain is building your sense of how long you lived purely out of how much you actually noticed, then a person who spent 40 years on autopilot didn't get 40 years. Not really. Not in the only currency the brain accepts. You don't run out of time, you run out of noticing. That's the sentence I'd want you to leave with. Not time flies, which is a cliche that lets you off the hook. The real version is heavier. Time doesn't fly, attention does. And attention is the one thing, unlike actual time, you still have some control over. You can't make a Tuesday in your 30s feel exactly like a Tuesday at age 10. That door's mostly closed. Your brain's model of the world is too complete now. But you can stop letting every week look identical to the last one. You can take the slightly longer route home. You can learn the thing you've been putting off. You can put the phone down before the 3-hour fragment feed starts and let a conversation go somewhere unscripted instead of running the usual lines. Every one of those is a small, deliberate refusal to let your brain file the day as nothing happened. Because somewhere out there, right now, there's a kid lying in grass on a boring Tuesday, doing absolutely nothing, building a memory that's going to outlast 100 of your adult years combined. The strange part is, he's not doing anything you can't still do. He's just not pretending he already knows what today is going to be like.